Leaders in higher education, when it comes to scale student support, stop guessing. Studiosity is globally trusted, used by educators for 20 years to build critical thinking and ownership amongst all students at scale. Studiosity is designed just for colleges, not for consumers, and it comes with a proven 4.4x return on retention. It's writing feedback, it's infrastructure for your whole college, and it won't give corrections because it encourages learning and empowers educators with insight into that learning. It's time for AI to ethically serve the mission of American schools. Ask for your free demo at studiosity.com/ace. Raise your standards for AI in education and protect the value of your degrees with Studiosity.
The EdUp experience has delivered over 1,000 episodes with higher ed leaders from around the world. Now you can support the show for just $5.99 a month and lock in that rate for life when you join before December 31st, 2025. You'll enjoy ad-free early access to episodes. Go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com. Click support the show and secure your lifetime rate today. Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Elvin Freitas, co-founder of the EdUp Experience. And we are back on another episode. And I'm super excited because I have a first-time guest co-host. She's been on before, but now she's coming back as a guest co-host. And she is Dr. Carmen Chin. She's a vice provost of NAU Online at Northern Arizona University. Carmen, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you, Elvin?
I'm doing fantastic, and I'm glad you're here. Excited that you're going to be co-hosting for the first time. And we have a new guest, first time on, but his company is probably familiar to the loyal listeners because we had the CEO on earlier this year. And I'm going to bring him now. He is Jack Goodman. He's the founder of Studiosity, and he is early in the morning in Australia. Jack, how you doing?
I'm doing really well, Elvin. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for being here. We like to get right into it, Jack. So tell us all about what you do and how do you do it?
Well, that's a good question. It's a big one, actually, Elvin and Carmen. I founded Studiosity, believe it or not, 22 years ago, maybe more, 23 now. It's a long, long road, but I've been involved in ed tech for more like 30. Originally back in the U.S., in New York and Boston, places like that. Probably here my accent is still there, but I've been living in Australia for decades now. And when I first moved back here with my partner, I decided that there was an opportunity and a need for an online study support platform that would provide real-time study assistance to students, regardless of their geographic or socioeconomic circumstances. I looked around, and Australia had a lot of similarities to the U.S. in terms of the developed economy, a place where education is really important, lots of technology, huge distances to cover, only a fraction of the population. There's only 25 million people here. But they didn't really have an ed tech economy, and this was after the first technology or internet collapse on the stock market. So when I came out here, people were really puzzled and thinking, "What are you doing?" And there was no pathway to starting something with funding. So I just bootstrapped it. My wife worked as hard as she could. We looked after 3 little kids along the way, and I bootstrapped this business. And it was an incredible journey. We started off working with public libraries, helping public libraries provide academic study support to their students after school. Libraries are the #1 destination for school kids, and they're there to do their studies, to do their homework, to study for high school exams. And we built a study platform that allowed them to have one-to-one study help after school. Fast forward to today, business has transformed tremendously. It's grown significantly. We now have operations in not just in Australia, but in the UK, in North America, headquartered in Salt Lake City, also in the Middle East. We work with about 200 universities and colleges. Our core business is supporting universities now. Libraries are still a little part of what we do. It's all in our DNA, but the mission really hasn't changed, which is to increase life chances for students everywhere. And we do that through partnering exclusively with university administrators and administrations to provide an integrated learning support platform for students. And I'll just finish up really briefly here because it was a key moment, as you can imagine, about 3 years ago when we all faced a key moment when generative AI became a reality for all of us to deal with. So from about 2015 to 2023, we had built our platform to provide really the best-in-class foundational writing feedback platform. Students could upload a draft of a document and get an incredible critique of the work that they were doing from a growing global network of writing specialists that we had recruited. At our peak, we had, well over 1,200 of these people working across all time zones in Commonwealth countries. We really see ourselves as a, Australian, British, New Zealand, South African, Canadian providers. These were the people that we're really focused on. And we developed an incredible network of these people. And they could turn a document around in a few hours. We promised 24, but we could usually do it in 3 or 4 or 5 hours. And we were doing millions of these documents for universities. And then, of course, OpenAI released ChatGPT and the world turned upside down. And people said, what are you going to do about this? Well, we were fortunate that we've been running our business sensibly and we've been profitable for many, many years. And so we said, we need to use this technology. And it wasn't a shock to us because we've been investigating and researching and working in artificial intelligence for several years. But to cut a long story short, and I apologize about this, but it is important. We dove right into the tech and we set ourselves a challenge. Could we re-engineer our entire platform so that instead of it being human powered, we would have our humans, those subject specialists in the loop, and we would use large language models, multiple models trained on our millions and millions of pieces of data to provide as good, if not better, feedback, and to do that in 2 minutes or less. And we managed to do that. We launched that platform. We call it Writing Feedback Plus, that part of our platform, in February of 24. And today, over 70% of our university customers are migrated entirely onto that platform. And that was a huge part of our journey. So that is what we do. There's another really important piece of news, but I'll stop there for now.
Yeah, and I appreciate the context. And before I pass it over to you, Carmen, let me just follow up because there is an important piece of news that you definitely want to cover. So I was hoping that you could do that now for us.
Oh, sure. Look, so you can see at our heart, in our DNA, we are about student learning, about augmenting student capabilities. And we do that through deep partnerships with universities. And I should have also mentioned, we evidence that through research. We've done over 35 studies with universities across the globe where universities have done deep investigations, published papers, and given talks at conferences about the evidence of impact of our platform. So we don't cut any corners. We are rigorous about learning integrity. Just at the start of this week, or by the time this gets published, maybe last week or November, let's say, we just announced an acquisition of an ed tech company, our very first acquisition ever, a company called Norvalid. It's a startup based in Norway, and it specializes in taking a unique approach to validating student learning as opposed to trying to police dishonest work or cognitive offloading. So what Norvalid does and what this concept is that we want to keep the idea of learning and thinking at the core of our platform. And I think that is something that the entire higher education sector probably cares about as well. So with the Norvalid technology, we're able to identify if a piece of writing is not just human, but if it is written by a particular human, and then also to allow that human to evidence their understanding of what they have written through a series of integrity quizzes and assessments at the point of time of submission. So we're able to allow a student to we're able to support and validate their own work as opposed to taking a police and punish approach where others might try and detect AI in writing or detect cognitive offloading. It's a really different approach. We really think this needs to be about supporting the student, helping the student develop their skills. There's no doubt generative AI plays a huge role in helping students learn better, faster, and new skills. But at the core, we have to stay focused on the integrity of the human learning that's going on and the augmentation of human cognitive skills. And that's what this Norvalid acquisition is all about.
Fantastic. And speaking of human, Carmen, you are a human. It's not a digital twin yet. So over to you, Carmen.
Awesome. Thanks, Melvin. Jack, such an exciting acquisition and some really exciting moves forward for Studiosity. Tell me a little bit more about how you feel like assessment and validation of learning is changing in the age of AI and in light of tools like what you just acquired with Norvalid.
Well, I think it is changing. It needs to change more. But I think also, Carmen, there's been a lot of discussion about entirely transforming the entire assessment and validation model for education because these machines, because these foundational large language models, these unconstrained models, are capable of doing the entire undergraduate or realistically the postgraduate learning experience. And I think that that's a little bit unfortunate that the sector has jumped to the conclusion that because a machine can now do everything that a human university student can do, that we need to simply either stop doing what the machine can do better than us, or that we need to assess them in ways that measure learning that we otherwise would have preferred to assess in a different way. I guess what I mean by that is machines have been better than humans at things for a long, long time, right? The car moves us from A to B, traffic problems accepted, way faster than humans. Bicycles move us from A to B way faster. Steve Jobs famously called the computer a bicycle for the mind. But what we have now is a machine that can mimic human output, human thinking. It looks like human thinking. I think one of the saddest things is we call it artificial intelligence. It's not intelligence, it's artificial prediction of human output. And it's an amazing tool when it's used really well. But I don't think it's being used very well. I don't think universities have thought, unfortunately, they haven't had an opportunity to think about this in the way that they really need to, because these the foundation large language models have made it almost impossible for anyone to do that. They have shoved into our ecosystem tools that are profoundly unsuited to the learning process. So what we want to do is preserve and protect the things that we know are really important and support and validate what students are doing. We can take people back into a big lecture theater, and we can put them down in desks separated by chairs. Then we can put proctors or invigilators in there. We can give them blue books and pencils, and we can make them all right, and we can take all their technology away. That doesn't stop people from cheating, by the way, if they really want to cheat. And that's something that has happened since time immemorial. So that also doesn't deal with the fact that over half of all students are studying in some sort of online or hybrid mode. So we can't just disadvantage or throw that all out. That's an absurdity. What I think is happening, and this is me having done this for 30 years and been thinking just very, very deeply, and this is not, I don't mean to say me, this is our organization, this is in our DNA, but this is my background. And by the way, I should just say, it goes back to, I started before I got into EdTech, I was a reporter at the Chronicle of Higher Education. And before that, I did a master's in political theory in the UK. So and I almost became an academic. So I'm sort of been around the edges of higher ed for a long, long time. But what I see is that we need now more than ever humans that are capable of, you hear this all the time, critical thinking skills. But the critical thinking doesn't happen unless you get deep domain knowledge and you learn how to use language well. And that's what education and higher education is all about, is using the language well. The machines are able to pump out more language than we've ever been able to. That doesn't mean we should stop. The machines are able to kill us at chess. Does that mean we shouldn't teach our kids chess? No, of course not. This is ridiculous. So I would like us to think, thank you very much, OpenAI, for inventing this technology or commercializing it. Thank you very much, Google, for Gemini. These are great productivity tools. Productivity tools. There's a difference between productivity and learning. And you don't need productivity when you're in a learning setting. In fact, you need the antidote to productivity, because learning isn't about productivity. Learning is about developing connections in neurons inside the human brain. Everyone has to do that their own way and in their own time.
Yeah. Yeah, I've often heard the analogy when talking about AI and its manifestations is, what calculators did, in the previous century, and the ways that it accelerates, somebody's ability to engage with math. But the reality is that we often don't introduce that tool to students until they've already mastered, again, the core concepts in math. I happen to have a middle schooler who's deep into Algebra 1 at this stage in his life. And so we're talking a lot about, how and why we use those tools, but we have to have the foundational mastery there and the core understanding, and then use that then to accelerate that and offload some of the cognitive tasks to be able to focus on the higher level algebra as you move into those later stages. So there's so many great parallels of previous iterations of technology that have done this too.
You make such a good point, Carmen, and I really appreciate that. And it's something I've written about at length. Probably not too many of your listeners have read it because it was published in the Australian, but not long after ChatGPT was released, I wrote something specifically about exactly this and pointing out that the calculator analogy, or let's just say the thesaurus analogy, or the spell checker analogy, or Wikipedia as an analogy for memory, or just the Internet 1.0 in terms of us not needing to know any facts anymore, which of course we know is not true. But these are actually all quite different types of memory offloading or skill offloading. And there are risks. And we know we are, I know I'm not as good at basics of calculations as my 90-year-old father-in-law, who was an accountant for 80 years or 70 years and can still just run through calculations and numbers way faster than I ever will. And that's because he never used a calculator growing up. But we make trade-offs there. But the difference here with this technology is that it is essentially taking over all of the thinking work, right? It is full cognitive offloading. You can give it the most basic of prompts, and it will spit out something that is passable and that may even be undetectable in some situations by an instructor. You won't know what it says. We know for a fact now through those studies, MIT and elsewhere, that we won't have learned anything. There will be absolute evidence that there has been no cognitive enhancement by the student, but the machine has done all of this work. And that is a categorically different level of capability. And it's something we have to be extremely careful with because we're talking about education here. And, I'm afraid right now that we are coming up to 3 years of students who know in their heart of hearts that they have been using this technology to diminish their own learning, and it is impacting their employability skills. This is not about having specific skills. This is about having the capacity to think creatively and intelligently, to bring ideas together. This is really Bloom's taxonomy, and this is students who are just not getting up that pyramid to the highest levels of synthesis to be able to be employable, and that is deeply disturbing. And I think you've seen this. You see this recently with the announcement of things like study mode and guided learning. These are so obvious as to beggar belief that these organizations only just discovered that maybe students aren't learning with these tools. And it's deeply, deeply troubling that they only now come out with these tools and say, oh, well, why don't we do this? Because it'll help. It'll help with students making sure that they're learning and not kind of bypassing the learning. And we've known from the moment these tools were developed. I realized it, 3 minutes in, I thought, wow, this is unbelievable. And it's not a surprise that students were the number one adopters because it does their job if you let it. And that is a disaster.
Well, to kind of shift us in a different direction, one of the things I really have appreciated in learning more about Studiosity is the focus on a strengths-based approach to learning. So can you tell us a little bit more about what that strengths-based approach means and how that differs from traditional tutoring or learning models?
Leaders in higher education, when it comes to scaled student support, stop guessing. Studiosity is globally trusted, used by educators for 20 years to build critical thinking and ownership amongst all students at scale. Studiosity is designed just for colleges, with a proven 4.4x return on retention. It's time for AI to ethically serve the mission of American schools. Ask for your free demo at studiosity.com/ace. Raise your standards for AI in education and protect the value of your degrees with Studiosity.
Support the EdUp experience for just $5.99 a month and lock in that rate for life. You'll get ad-free early access to episodes. But hurry, price goes up after December 31st, 2025. Visit edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and click support the show.
Yeah, sure. So our view is that anytime we're trying to support a student in with their learning, we want to make comments and suggestions and provide feedback that's digestible, that's incremental, and that a student needs to think about and then to absorb and action on their own. So our writing feedback tool allows a student to upload a draft, and then we provide feedback across a whole range of aspects of that writing, from the most basic and fundamental spelling and grammar and things like that. We still try to teach those things, actually. We still think there's real value in knowing how to spell something, even though the machines will correct everything for you. We think there's real value in that, in learning how to use your memory, to know how to do something, because there will be times when you don't have a spell checker running. But that's a small thing. The structure of their writing, the cohesiveness of their sentences, right up through the critical thinking skills of and the evidence of cognition in their writing, and soon feedback on the specifics of the content in their document as well. But all of that feedback is presented. It's color coded, it's interactive, it's done in our online app, and it's all done though so that the student needs to read it and then think about it and make a decision. Is this something I want to action? There is no click and accept. There is no please reformat, rewrite, readjust. This thing is 1,600 words and it needs to be 2,450. And I'd like to just make it all look beautiful and have it finished in 30 seconds, please. The technology will do that for you. The technology will do even more than that. We make sure our view is that's not learning. That's not helping the student. That's hurting the student. We don't want to do that, right? We don't want to have a humanizer in our platform. I think that's a terrible idea. A humanizer. Think about what that even says about what it's doing. Take this piece of robot writing and humanize it for me. So it sounds more like a person. It's not me, because I didn't write it. So, but we could try and I can create the perception that it is. That is the to quote Tricia Bertram Gallant, that is the opposite of learning, right? Or misquote, adjust her terrific book, The Opposite of Cheating. But that's the opposite of learning. We want to be, and we are always on the side of learning. So that's the approach we take, that anytime we're providing feedback and guidance, we are doing it in the way the student has to absorb it. And the second thing I'd say about that, Carmen, is that we also ask the students for feedback on the feedback that we're giving them. So we're always checking to say, how did this work for you? What did you think? Was this helpful? And we're using all of that feedback to improve the feedback that we are giving. And then we also have those humans who are highly trained, super skilled, and they are homing all over every single one of our interactions to make sure that we are delivering an absolutely impeccable experience. That doesn't mean every single experience is absolutely perfect, but we are doing everything we can to keep humans in the loop, in charge, and all of this to be about their learning and their augmentation. And I think ultimately that's what everyone wants. Everyone in the sector anyway, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. There's so many different ways to be able to convey a message. And it sounds like really what your team is focused on is helping to highlight opportunities where they can strengthen that message, have a clearer audience, call to their audience, or a clear way of being able to communicate what they're trying to say. And that it's received differently by students versus saying you got this wrong and this wrong and this wrong, and you're sort of pointing out mistakes and fixes. Instead, you're framing it as a way to strengthen what their intentions are or what the goal of that assignment might have been.
One of the amazing things, it's a really good point. One of the amazing things we discovered when we decided we needed to embed large language model technology in our platform was we realized that the machines can do way more work than humans can, right? A human that was going to take a certain amount of time to review a 1,500 word essay by a student could give 15 pieces of feedback, let's say, maybe 20. The machine can give 200, right? And it can do it in a minute. It's too much. It's too much feedback. We've needed to figure out how do we get the machine to provide less feedback? Not all of it's, and maybe really clear about this too. How do we make sure that every piece of feedback the machine gives is guaranteed to be hallucination free? Because we don't believe the idea of a hallucination has any place in higher education. If you cast your mind back to October of 2022, pre-ChatGPT, I don't think there's anyone working at any level, at any university, anywhere in the world who would say a machine that makes up facts, that makes up references, has any place in the academy. Everything we believe in is meant to be fact-based, is meant to be evidence-based, and a machine that fictionalizes that in a way that is designed and capable of fooling even the most knowledgeable professors is the opposite of learning. So, but we've had adjustments to contain these large language models. And that's the point, because they'll give too much feedback. They'll make too many changes. They'll make too many suggestions. They'll overwhelm us all with way too much information that we can't possibly digest. So, this gets to the point. What we've really built here is a highly constrained tool that does one thing really well. And that's what the validation component is going to be. It'll be embedded very, very soon into our platform in a way that allows students to take that learning that they've gained from the writing process, the thinking process, and then to validate and to show what they've really done. And it doesn't need to be that this is entirely done without using generative AI. The technology is designed to show where on a spectrum you might have used it. And it might be perfectly fine, according to your instructor, to use generative AI for certain parts of the task, not for other parts. This is going to be a way where instructors will be able to very easily see how much generative AI was used here. Was it used for ideation? Was it used for some research? Was it used for an outline? Was it used for writing sentences? What was it used for, and how was it used? And how much learning did the student benefit from? And that's what we really want to give every student that chance to show, hey, this is what I know, and this is what I've been able to do. I think ultimately that's going to be the place we're going to get to. But gee, we're going through some rocky times right now.
Yeah, it's a process for sure. And, and helping to teach students again that there's value in that drafting process and the intentionality of the steps and building up, their thoughts towards whatever the culminating byproduct is for sure. So I was reading through the press release related to this recent acquisition with Norvalid, and I saw that the new technology is using something called the digital linguistic fingerprinting. So I was hoping you could tell me a little bit more about what that is and how is that different than other punitive or detection-focused approaches in the AI detection space?
It's a proven approach, and I'll just say that the Norvalid technology is built around what's known as in the industry as and I've had to learn a lot about this along the way, a Swiss cheese model where there are multiple tests and multiple things that are run through the process, both through the document, the submission, and the student, that are designed so that even if a piece of work goes through one part, it might get picked up somewhere else, and you end up with a clearer picture, a sort of three-dimensional picture, not just a red flag or a speedometer. But the digital linguistic fingerprinting is based on the idea that we all have some sort of uniqueness in the way that we express ourselves in writing. So if we can take a piece of writing, a short piece of writing, up to about 500, that we can have as an unfiltered, un-AI enhanced piece of Carmen's writing or Elvin's writing or Jack's writing, we can use that as a baseline and say, okay, well, we understand how, we have an idea, we have a little bit of a fingerprint of Elvin's writing style or Carmen's writing style, and their use of vocabulary and their use of syntax and grammar. And we use that as a baseline as part of the process. And how we capture that, there are multiple different ways of doing that, whether that's done, literally in an application, or it's done by an institution at the start of a term or a start of an academic course or a year. But that's part of the process, but it's not the only part. And one of the parts that I really find most compelling about the platform as well is that post the linguistic fingerprinting and post the various perplexity and other types of tests, where we're really just trying to see, did you just run this through a humanizer and try to make this sound like someone did this? And this is something other writing platforms do. But we ask students a series of questions about the content of their submission. Some of these are short answer. Some of them are fill in the blanks. Fill in the blank questions are really interesting. These are time-based. There's a very short amount of time to do them. We ask the student to just complete them. It only takes about 5 minutes to do this. But if you've written something or you've really carefully reviewed it, you'll know the words that are in there, and you'll be able to answer a short sentence or two, anything that's in that document. It's very clear. And ultimately, what we want to know is that a student understands what's in the work that they've submitted. Now, do they have to write every word? No, of course not. And we don't expect that anymore. But they really need to know what's in there. And that's where we really want to zero our attention in. So that's a picture of how the platform works.
Thanks for explaining a little bit more about that. Definitely caught my eye.
Yeah.
Well, Alvin, I'll pass it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Carmen. Fantastic conversation. Jack, before I ask you the last question, I'm curious. You seem like a guy that is okay with not holding your tongue. You're like, I'm going to tell it how it is. I appreciate that. It's good to have a guest like. So tell me something here. This seems like a no-brainer. We have a lot of college presidents who listen to this podcast, and it seems like having this platform on their campus is just a no-brainer to me. Am I missing something? And when you talk to other higher ed institutions and they're like, no, this isn't fun. Why would they say that? What do they think? What's the challenge here?
It's you make me laugh, Owen. Yeah, look, there's a reason I I've been an entrepreneur my whole career. Um, and I think you picked it up. It doesn't always serve me well, but yeah, I have a hard time when I know something, when I've studied it deeply, when I've thought a lot about it, and I feel like there is something that that needs to be said. I'm prepared to say that, and our organization stands behind what we believe in, and it can be hard to do that when when the tide is going in a different direction, let's say. But I've seen it happen enough over the last 30 years where people have gotten seduced by ideas, and sometimes they've turned out, and I'll admit too, there have been times when I've been wrong and I've been like, wow, but that is something that I have found has been incredibly liberating and helpful to myself when I've been able to publicly acknowledge, yeah, I made a mistake there. I didn't predict what was going to happen. Well, one thing I didn't predict, Elvin, when large language models came out, I didn't predict that these unconstrained foundational models would be given away for free, basically, for free for as long as they have, and who knows how much longer, but for free to young people, to university students. Forget about high school students. We haven't even talked about them. And younger, right? I mean, primary school kids. I mean, COVID and now this, with no real regard to the integrity of what is being put out there. So, yeah, I am happy to be the person who says exactly what this is, which is these tools in their unconstrained foundational models are the antithesis of learning. They're the opposite of learning. These are not tools that, Australia has a national academic integrity legislation, and the country has sued and or blocked websites that are considered contract cheating websites. These are websites that you could pay money back before large language models and have someone write an essay for you. The only difference now is that these tools are ubiquitous, potentially undetectable, it's debatable, and so far free. And when you suddenly make all of those things happen, you effectively give everyone the ability to do this. It's forced, the academy has said, well, maybe we need to redefine what academic integrity is. And my view is no, I don't think that's right at all. I think that is absolutely wrong. So to your point, yeah, I think this is a no-brainer. I'm not saying we're the only people who've thought about it this way, that our platform is the absolute best. I think it's pretty bloody good. And I think that if I were running a university right now, I'd say this is so much better than the alternative of letting students go and explore or use whatever they want, or then trying to catch them out and invariably catching lots, but not catching others, or misidentifying students and accusing students who haven't been doing the wrong thing. Those are disastrous. The thing that if I could ask for one thing for university leaders to do, I'd say, please, in this environment, as we are seeing it evolve right now in front of our eyes, let's acknowledge that we need to give all of our students access to the right sorts of generative AI tools, the right sorts of tools that are about learning, not about cognitive offloading. And we need to be able to say, these are the tools we want you to use. We're going to provide them to you. You've got everything you need, and you don't need to go and use something else. And we really don't want to discourage you from doing that. We can't stop it. But if you do that, you're probably going to be voiding the warranty of your degree. And that's the most important thing of all, because if these universities lose the validity of their degrees, that's the end of the game. And we can't afford to let that happen as a society. So yeah, I am the kind of person that speaks out. I can see this. There will come a day when this will change, and we'll all look back and say, what was that fever? Right? But right now, we need to just take some medicine. And I think this is part of what we have to do. It's a very difficult time, but I would hope that, people think long and hard about this and don't just get bullied by big companies that have a lot of power, more than we all have, for sure.
I love it. Jeff. That's good. Yeah. It just got me thinking that I think you mentioned it earlier. It's like learning. I feel like failure is so much learning and failure and frustration, right? I keep hearing it. we got to let our kids get frustrated. Because I got a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old, 2 girls. And I'm just like, I just let them get frustrated. And I'm always like, figure it out. Just figure it out. Figure it out.
Right.
And get frustrated. Yeah.
I can remember today questions I got wrong in 5th grade or in college. I can remember those questions, right, Elvin, Carmen? Can't remember all the questions I got right. I can remember things I got wrong, the failures. I can remember the tests I did bad on. Think about that. Those memories, that's a long time for me. I'm the old guy here. But we all can remember the failures, right? Because that's then when you learn it after you failed, you're like, wow, that makes sense. Now I understand it. If it came too easily, it doesn't stick. It's when it's hard that it sticks, right? And we need learning to stick. And right now, this stuff, this unconstrained stuff, it's like WD-40 in the brain. It, feels great. Everything seems to go beautifully, but who can remember anything? I can't. And I'm sure we all had that same experience. You're like, oh my God, what did I just do?
Carmen, you wanted to say something?
No, just I couldn't agree more. I think it's, there's value in the process and like you said, building grit for learners to be able to push through when things are hard and to build the coping skills to, again, use the resources at their fingertips, but also at the same time, they have to be able to demonstrate the mastery fundamentally. I think it's also too for our faculty an opportunity to continue to reflect upon, how are we assessing learning and pushing ourselves and thinking about authentic assessment, ways that really are, allow students to demonstrate the learning rather than, sticking with the things that can be in those lower levels of understanding in Bloom's taxonomy and really pushing towards more hands-on and applied, instances of the things that they're trying to help their students master.
I couldn't agree more. I think that is exactly right. I'll just make one last point real quickly, if it's okay. Sorry, but this comes back to that whole idea too that with these tools, with these machines now, we just need to become really good at using the technology, right? This is the other big kind of untruth about this. We need to teach everyone to become really good at using this technology, as if they're going to be careers as prompt engineers, but for people who haven't got some domain knowledge and some ability to really interrogate what's going on. It reminds me of my early days as a journalist. This would be the equivalent of saying, look, you're not really qualified to be a reporter, a junior reporter, a cub reporter. We're gonna put you right into the role of being the editor, and you're going to be the editor of this instead, and you're going to be fact checking and trying to help the machine do a better job and check its outputs. There's just no way for someone who doesn't have the experience learning how to be a reporter to be an editor. There's no way for a student who doesn't have domain knowledge to be fact checking and to be interrogating the outputs of these machines. They're going to fool students all the time. So I think we need to remember what learning looks like, and to your point, Carmen, what the process is like, and figure out how to use these machines in the constrained ways so that the learning can still happen, because humans aren't going to get rewired at the speed that these machines are rewiring us, and they're just going to undermine us, and we're going to be the ones who suffer, and it's going to be a terrible outcome unless we step right in now, but quite forcefully.
So you mentioned about the outcome. So last question.
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear your answer. What do you see as the future of higher education?
This will shock you. I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic. And I'll tell you why, because there are so many smart people like you guys, like that care about this and that can actually see it. And I hear and see them all day, every day, talking about it. I'm optimistic because at the end of the day, there are millions of people working in higher ed and tens of millions of students in higher ed, hundreds of millions globally, who are there to learn. I'm not optimistic in the very near future because I have seen what the power of billions and billions of dollars or hundreds of billions of dollars of technology pushed into a sector that doesn't really have any defenses. This is kind of like introducing introduced species. Like the British brought foxes to Australia, and they decimated the local population of marsupials because we had no capacity to, there were no predators for them, right? But you introduce this technology and, there needs to be some sort of rapid evolution in terms of the response by the sector to deal with this technology. That's not to say the sector doesn't need to change. Oh my goodness, does it need to change? It needs to transform itself. And it has been woefully slow in acknowledging that and figuring that out. But it's been really caught on the back foot here. This really is the first genuine disruption. I'm optimistic because I think this is such an existential moment that university leaders are realizing now they cannot just wait for things to calm down to a new normal. They're going to have to move forward in positive ways to try and ensure that the integrity of the degrees that they are providing is intact. So I think it will happen, but I think this is an incredibly painful moment, and I didn't wish it on anyone, but here we are, and this is what we all have to do. And for those of us who care about the mission, we're all on the same page. But there will be casualties along the way. But I am optimistic because when we get through this period, and it will just be an ongoing, rolling process, we will have exemplars of how to do this well. There'll be institutions that will model it. There will be smart people who will be able to lead their institutions, and we will look at them and say, "That's working. How do we replicate that?"
Absolutely. And we're lucky because we have one very smart person working in higher ed who is our co-host today. She is Dr. Carmen Chin, Vice Provost of NAU Online at Northern Arizona University. Carmen, thank you so very much for co-hosting today.
Of course, you're too kind. Thank you, Alvin. And it was great to chat with you, Jack.
Absolutely. Speaking of Jack, he's your guest. Ladies and gentlemen, he is Jack Goodman. He's the founder of Studiosity. Jack, thank you so very much for being with us today.
Thank you, Elvin, and thank you, Carmen. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, you've just EdUp. EdUp Experience has brought you powerful conversations with more than 400 college presidents and higher ed leaders, over 1,000 episodes and counting. Now, we're inviting you to join us in shaping the future of higher ed podcasting. For just $5.99 a month, you lock in that rate for life, but only if you sign up before December 31st, 2025. As a supporter, you'll get ad-free early access to episodes. Prices go up after December 31st, but your rate never will. Visit edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com. Click support the show and join our community today.
Higher ed leaders, when it comes to scaled student writing feedback, stop guessing. Get Studiosity. Trusted by colleges, Studiosity has helped students for 20 years with integrity, not corrections. Get your free demo at studiosity.com/ace.